Israeli occupation army killed 32 Palestinian civilians after bombing a United Nations agency school in the central Gaza Strip. In the Netherlands, more than 13 million citizens head to the polls on Thursday to elect a new European Parliament. And in Haiti, 5 million people are victims of the biggest food crisis since the 2010 earthquake, according to a report published by the United Nations. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. On Thursday, the Israeli occupation army killed 32 Palestinian civilians after bombing a United Nations agency school in the central Gaza Strip. In this sense, the Wafa news agency reported that hundreds of displaced Palestinians were sheltering in the Al-Sardi school in the Nusayrat refugee camp, which was targeted by the Israeli army. Meanwhile, local authorities reported that a large number of dead and wounded bodies arrived at the collapsed Al-Aqsa hospital. The Palestinian resistance movement Hamas condemned the attack as a horrible massacre and said that among the victims were many women and children. Since the October onslaught of its genocidal war against Palestine, Israel has killed 36,586 people and wounded over 83,000. On the other hand, images were released on Thursday morning showing the devastation caused at the Nusayrat Preparatory School for Boys affiliated to the UNRWA. Local sources reported that an Israeli warplane attacked the upper floors of the school compound at night while the people were sleeping. UNRWA schools throughout Gaza have functioned as shelters since the beginning of the genocidal war perpetrated by Israel, which has displaced most of the territory's population of 2.3 million Palestinians. According to UN agencies, more than 200 schools have been attacked since October 7th. And in parallel to the genocide committed by Israel in Gaza, over 800 Jewish extremists stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem's Old City on Wednesday, carrying Israeli flags and chanting provocative songs in celebration of Flag Day. Under heavy police protection, the extremists stormed the Muslim holy site. While it is also a Jewish holy place, since a 1967 agreement, worship at the site is reserved for Muslims, while Jews can only enter as visitors and pray at the nearby Wailing Wall. Rabbis and officials, including the far-right minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, also took part in the demonstration. Flag Day celebrates the end of the 1967 war, which gave way to the illegal occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Humanitarian organizations reported that the Israeli occupation army has used white phosphorus munitions to attack at least 17 towns in southern Lebanon. Since October 2023, Israel has endangered, targeted, and displaced civilians in Lebanon by bombarding towns in the south of the country with white phosphorus and other explosive devices. An international human rights organization warned that white phosphorus is a highly dangerous chemical used in artillery shells, bombs, and missiles that can cause fires, serious injuries, and death. The use of this substance is a violation of human rights and international law, and its indiscriminate use is considered an illegal act by human rights organizations. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, at least 400 people have been killed and 1,603 injured in Lebanon by the Israeli army since the beginning of the latest escalation of its war against Palestine. The health agency also emphasized that during this time, some 94,000 people have been left homeless. The Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah confirmed attacks against Israeli soldiers as part of its frontline operations in support of the people of Palestine. According to Hezbollah, its forces ambushed a group of Israeli soldiers and attacked them with heavy artillery as they were entering the Palestinian village of Al-Makiyah. The resistant group also informed that it had launched an attack against Israeli military settlements near Birket Risha in southern Lebanon, as well as in the Syrian Golan Hills, occupied by the Tel Aviv army. These attacks are part of the Lebanese resistance actions against the Israeli occupation army and in support of Palestinian fighters. We now move on to other topics. In the Netherlands, more than 13 million citizens head to the polls on Thursday to elect a new European Parliament. In this context, polling stations will remain open until 9 p.m. local time to allow voting for 31 of the 751 members of the European Parliament. According to the latest polls, the far-right Party for Freedom, led by Geert Wilders, is leading the polls ahead of leftist candidate and former European Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans. It should be noted that more than 370 million people in the European Union bloc are eligible to vote in this parliamentary election. On Wednesday, the Venezuelan delegation, headed by Foreign Minister Ivan Gil, held a working meeting in the city of Beijing with the director of the China National Space Administration, Zhang Keijiang. The meeting focused on giving continuity to the historic space collaboration agreement signed last year between both countries, which included training of Venezuelan cosmonauts in China and future missions to the moon. During the visit of the Venezuelan delegation, they evaluated the process of the agreement signed at the 17th High-Level Joint Commission held in September 2023, when President Nicolás Maduro traveled to the Asian nation, as well as the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin warned that attacks with the participation of Western countries against the Russian Federation mean a direct war against the nation in which Moscow can respond. During the annual meeting with heads of Russian and international news agency within the framework of the International Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, the president stated that the Kremlin will reserve the right to act in a similar way, as this is the way to more serious problems. The Russian head of state also warned that the government of Germany that the use of German weapons by Ukraine to attack targets in Russia would be a dangerous step and would ruin diplomatic relationships between Berlin and Moscow. Putin considered that Russia also has the right to provide long-range weapons to attack targets in the West.
We're thinking about the issue. If someone considers it possible to supply such weapons to a combat zone to attack our territory and create problems for us, then why don't we have the right to supply our weapons of the same kind to those regions of the world where attacks will be carried out against important targets of those countries that do the same against Russia?
Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Haiti, 5 million people are victims of the biggest food crisis since the 2010 earthquake. According to a report published by the United Nations Organization from the Central Kitchen of the World Food Programme in Port-au-Prince, the agency's director, Jean-Martin Bauer, indicated that of the 5 million people suffering from acute food insecurity, close to 1.6 million are classified as emergency food insecure, the highest figure ever recorded. The problem in the country worsened at the beginning of March after criminal gangs tightened their grip on the Haitian capital through coordinated attacks on police stations, freeing thousands of prisoners from jail. In Venezuela, hundreds of citizens mobilized in the state of Bolívar in support of the government and in rejection of the sanctions imposed by the United States against the country. The demonstrations was led by the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, and the Executive Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez. The people gathered in the streets to show their support to the policies implemented by President Nicolás Maduro. Moreover, the citizens raised slogans in rejection to the sanctions imposed by the U.S. government. It should be noted that these mobilizations are being carried out throughout the national territory, as indicated by President Maduro.
Those who stole our gold from England, who stole a company in Colombia called Monomeros, who became multimillionaires by stealing what belongs to the people of Venezuela. They provoked us. They believed with their bold faces that they could steal, ask for sanctions, ask for invasions, send a letter to the government of Netanyahu telling Netanyahu, go and do in Venezuela the same barbarity that you're doing in Gaza. They are now coming to ask for the vote of the people, as if the people have no memory, as if the people doesn't remember all the damage they did.
In Colombia, social movements took to the streets to demand the elimination of paramilitarism. In the framework of the National Mobilization for Life and Permanence in the Territories, demonstrators denounced the wave of paramilitary violence against the popular communities of the country and the forced displacement of its inhabitants. The Congress of the Peoples and other organizations detailed that the mobilizations are not against the government of Gustavo Petro, but they do urge the state to take action to solve the causes of the social, political, environmental, and armed conflict in the country. In this context, in Colombia, within the framework of the constitutional right to mobilization and social protest, the People's Congress demands that Gustavo Petro's government comply with 8 strategic points to guarantee peace in the country. Among the demands are a change in national security doctrine, the dismantling of paramilitarism, the creation of urgent mechanisms of protection and self-protection for the defense of life and permanence in the territories. Likewise, the social movement requested a national plan to strengthen the People's Congress, as well as an initial plan for integral reparation and a permanent table for national dialogue and negotiation. And Brazil continues to grow. The South American giant surpassed Italy, becoming the 8th largest economy in the world. President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva posted on his social media, "One more proof that we are on the right track," after Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics announced that Brazil's GDP grew by 0.8% during the first quarter of 2024. Brazil ended 2023 as the 9th largest economy in the world, after overtaking Canada, a triumph that Lula also highlighted at the time. This June 5th, the world celebrated Environmental Day. The date brings together millions of people from across over 150 countries around the globe, engaging them in the effort to protect and restore the Earth. The United Nations designed the International Day, which has been led by the organization's Environment Program since its inception in 1973. The event aims to celebrate environmental action and the power of governments, businesses, and individuals to create a more sustainable world. In 2024, World Environment Day is being hosted by Saudi Arabia with a focus on land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. Meanwhile, in Brazil, on the occasion of World Environment Day, the Landless Movement carried out massive plantings throughout the week for the restoration of the areas near Rio Grande do Sul. The initiative of the MST movement is part of the National Day in Defense of Nature and its people, in cooperation with indigenous communities, universities, and Lula da Silva's government agencies. The massive planting is being carried carried out from a helicopter with 12 tons of seeds of Jucara and Araucaria trees, species at risk of extinction. The main objective of the movement is to increase biodiversity, confront global warming, and help regenerate the flora that was destroyed by floods and rains that affected Rio Grande do Sul.
It is an extraordinary experience. First, the initiative of the organized social movements, of the landless rural workers movement, plus the indigenous communities, to have this concern with a project that can generate income and protect the forest, in this case the Atlantic forest. It is an alliance between universities, social movements and government that demonstrates that it is possible to preserve and produce healthy food for the population.
Now we have a final short break coming up, but before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Senior officials of South Africa's African National Congress, the ANC, have held initial talks with representatives of 5 other parties about a coalition or agreement to form government, but no decision has been made. South Africa is facing an electoral deadlock after the long-ruling ANC lost its 30-year majority in an election last week. Still, no party managed to overcome it, as the ANC remained the dominant party. ANC spokesman Malengi Vengu Motsiri told reporters that explanatory talks had been held with the main opposition Democratic Alliance, the far-left Economic Freedom Fighters, and 3 other smaller parties.
The ANC has started engagements with political parties in the country. We have been meeting with all parties that are keen to contribute ideas on how we can collectively move our country forward to form a government that ensures national unity and stability in a country that continues the transformation of South Africa and safeguards our constitutional democracy.
Meanwhile, on Wednesday, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov continued his agenda in Burkina Faso as part of his African tour. The Russian Foreign Minister met with the acting President of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, expressed Russian President Vladimir Putin's best wishes to him and reaffirmed Moscow's openness to dialogue with the African country at the highest level. Lavrov previously visited the Republic of Guinea and Republic of Congo, where he held talks with the leaders of these countries on economic and military technical cooperation. It should be noted that this is Lavrov's first visit to Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. We go now to sports, as the French justice banned on Wednesday the sale of the Mexico 1986 World Cup Golden Ball won by Diego Maradona and ordered its seizure until the dispute over the trophy's whereabouts gets resolved. The Argentine football star's trophy was due to be auctioned in France on Friday in what could have been a record sale for a sporting object. With the decision, the Versailles Court of Appeals upheld the request of Maradona's heirs, who claimed the object, which reappeared in 2016 after nearly 3 decades, was lost after it got stolen from a bank safe in Italy in 1989. And in Isla Fuerte, located in the Colombian Caribbean, there is an underwater museum created to protect the coral reefs. The museum has 25 clay figures, each 1.5 meters high, arranged in a kind of artificial reef. The sculptures are now a refuge for corals, which have been affected by poor tourism practices and climate change. The corals, which are marine invertebrates, live in symbiosis with algae that live within their tissues and provide them with nourishment. However, when the water is too warm, they expel the algae and turn white, which exposes them to disease and death. Colombia has a coral area equivalent to 100,000 football fields. However, 70% of them are damaged. And like this, we have come to the end of this news script. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For teleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.